Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Home Designer Landscape and Deck project. My name is Kayla and I will be presenting for you today, and we also have Emily here with us, and she will be on chat answering any questions you might have during today's demonstration. Before we get started, we'll go ahead and take a look at our GoToMeeting control panel. The standard for your audio is to use mic and speakers. Now we do have everyone muted today, so you don't need to worry about setting up your microphone. However, if you're having problems hearing me, you can go ahead and select that Audio Setup button. It'll give you some troubleshooting options. Also check your computer volume, make sure that that's turned up as well. If you still aren't able to hear me or that's not working for you, go ahead and change the radial button over to Use Telephone. You'll see a number and a pin appear below. You're welcome to call in and listen in that way. Like I said, we do have Emily here with us, so at any point today, if you have any questions, just go ahead and type them into this box and click on Send. You'll see your question and Emily's response here below. If you can't find that control panel, it does minimize to this little box. Go ahead and select this orange button. It'll make it maximize so you can see all of those options that we've been looking at. Now we do have a number of product options here today. We'll be focusing on a lot of the features that are available in the Landscape and Deck program. However, I will be using Home Designer Professional, so be aware that there may be some features that I'll be using that will not be available in the Landscape and Deck program or in some of the other options. I'll show you later where you can find a full comparison chart on our website where you'll be able to look at the differences and see what's going to be available for each. So today we're going to go through a complete landscape project. We'll start by looking at our terrain, setting it, look at the elevation regions so we can create that nice sloped lot. We'll also then look at some terrain features. We'll create a deck, then a custom pool. We'll work with our plant chooser so we can place plants throughout our yard. And then we'll look at some fencing and maybe take a look at our materials list at the end. And as always, there's time for question and answer at the end as well as throughout the rest of the presentation. So now let's go ahead and open up our program. Again, I'll be working in Home Designer Professional today. With any of our Home Designer programs, as soon as you open it up, you'll see this welcome screen that'll appear here. Here's where you can choose to start a new plan. You can open up one that you've previously been working on, or if you'd like a little bit of help, if you need some getting started options, you can click on this button. It'll take you to our website, give you some training resources there. When I select New Plan, you'll see this template chooser that appears. These here are default setup in the program, so it's materials predefined before you begin your plan. If we click on this drop down, here's where you'll find some actual pre-designed plans, and you'll see we have two different options here, one for landscape and terrain, and then one for landscaping templates. Also note that here's where I can change my radial button over to metric units if you're not going to be working in the US imperial ones. I'm going to go ahead and click cancel because as you can see I already have a plan open for us today. So we're going to assume that we're starting with a home that we've already finished, but we need to create the landscaping that surrounds it. So to start off, let's go ahead and take a look at this plan that we already have done. And we'll use one of our perspective cameras and just take a full overview. So here's our already finished home, but as you can see it's just floating in space right now. So what we're going to work on today is everything surrounding this home. So to begin with, I'm going to go back to my plan view, and to do that I'm going to come up to my window button and come down to the floor plan, which will take me back to my plan view. I don't want to actually exit out of this quite yet. We'll leave that open so that we can open it up later. Right now, we're going to go up to our terrain and simply select Create Terrain Perimeter. This just gives us a starting point. So this is our terrain pad. It's going to place a basic flat lot for us to begin working on. So we can always resize this, and we have all of our edit handles so that we can manually resize our terrain, or this move handle where I can just move it around into a different location. And you can dimension it in a couple of different ways. One of those ways is to select one of the edges, put your cursor right over this dimension that's appearing here. I'll scroll in using my, or zoom in using my scroll wheel, and so you can see that a little better. And then click, and you'll see this box that appears here where I can type in any dimension, press enter, and it will update. There is another way that you can work on the terrain as well, especially if you have very specific setback requirements for your terrain. This can be a really handy way to make sure that you're meeting those. So I like to use the end-to-end dimension and simply go from each edge of the house to the edge of the terrain, draw them out, and I'm simply clicking on the edge of the wall and clicking on releasing once I hit the terrain. So clicking on the edge of the wall and releasing once I hit the terrain. Now the dimension that we saw before when we clicked the edge of our terrain is one of our temporary dimensions. So as soon as I clicked outside of the terrain, you'll notice it disappeared. These are my manual dimensions, and so they stay whether or not I have selected the wall or not. So we're going to go through the exact same process that we did before in order to create the correct setback for each of our terrain perimeters. So we'll start simply by selecting the left edge, and I'm going to scroll in a little bit, and then I'll put my cursor right over this dimension, click, and it tells me what the dimension currently is. I want to make sure that that's 32 feet, so I'm going to enter that in, making sure to put the foot marker there as well, and hit enter. And you'll see the terrain moved to update accordingly. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm just panning by holding down my scroll wheel so I can move to a different area of the terrain. Now I'm going to select this bottom edge and put my cursor right over the dimension, and this one I want to be 32 feet as well. Hit enter. Now I'm going to pan with my scroll wheel again, select the right edge, and we'll change this one to 26 feet. And now for the back. Select the back edge, put my cursor right over the dimension, click, and we'll type in 70 feet. We want quite a large backyard. Alright, and now that everything is dimensioned accordingly, I can select each of these dimensions and manually delete them, or this is a handy tool if you have quite a few dimensions. We can come up to Edit, and then Delete Objects, and then we're going to do all rooms on this floor, and we'll select Manual, and just for good measure we'll select Automatic. We don't have any automatic dimensions at this time. And click Delete, and you'll notice all three of those deleted at once. And then done. And then one last thing I want to do with my terrain perimeter before we work on the elevations. So I'm going to select this, and I can simply drag out this end so we have an angled end to our lot. So there are a lot of different shapes that you can create for your terrain perimeters, and I also want to note, while we have this selected, I'm going to come down to our Edit toolbar at the bottom. This toolbar is specific to whatever object you have selected at that time. So if you have a wall selected, you'll only see options applicable to edit that wall. Terrain, we have options that are only applicable to edit that terrain. And you'll see we have this Change Line to Arc button. So with one click, I can create an arced line if you have more of a curvy style of a lot. And you're able to move this in and out, create a lot of different shapes. And then with one click, I can move it back to my straight line. So now what I want to do is, we still have, this is just a basic flat lot. And so I want to change my elevations so that we can create a nice sloped lot for a walkout basement area. So to begin with, I want to have both my 3D and my 2D open at once. You can see by this camera that I still do have a 3D view open. And so I'm going to go ahead and I can either double click that, or I could have come up to the window and come over to my camera view. From here, I want to have both open tiled side by side. So I'm going to select Shift F6, and now I have both views open at once. So again, that's Shift F6, and when you have a 3D and a 2D view open, they'll tile vertically. Now I'm going to zoom in on my floor plan so we can see a little bit more of what we're doing. And I'm going to go ahead and double click on my terrain, or come down to the Edit toolbar and open it up, which is going to open up this specification. So there are quite a few things that we can do to modify the terrain. Some of them have to do simply with the way that it looks in a 3D overview. For instance, the skirt, whether or not you want simply a flat bottom to the skirt so that you can see the thickness of the elevation and it ends at a flat at the bottom, or if you want it just to follow the terrain. So it would be about 12 inches thick all the way along the elevations. I prefer to have it flat, but that's a preference thing. And I also like to uncheck this auto calculate elevation. I like to simply set the pad at a particular location and then edit everything from there. So I'm going to set the terrain at 130 inches. And what this does is it's actually the amount from the first floor, or the distance rather, from the first floor. So this is actually going to be a negative number. It's going to put my terrain 130 inches below my first floor. I'm going to select OK, and you can see that changed there. And now I'm going to come up to my terrain options, come down to elevation data, and select my elevation region. You do have a lot of different options for inputting terrain data. You can use lines, splines, or points. If you know specific elevations at various points throughout the plan, you can definitely use those, and also you can import terrain data, which will come in usually as points, to create an actual survey of the land. Or I like to use these elevation regions. This is especially handy when you don't necessarily know the exact elevation at every point throughout your plot, but you want to create the general look. So I'm going to start out simply by drawing out a region right about at the front of my deck. And I'm going to pull it forward quite a bit. And as I'm updating, it's going to move my terrain around, but that's okay. We'll just open it up and start to make some changes. So this elevation I want to be at 100 inches, and this number is set against the terrain, so it's going to pull my terrain up 100 inches. As you'll recall, my terrain is currently set at 130 inches from the first floor, so this is going to set it 30 inches from the terrain in that particular area. Because I only have one region, the entire terrain moved because it assumes that everything is going off of that number. As soon as we set a second region, which we'll do right now, and I'll put it right at the back of the house here, and I'm going to open this up, and we'll set this one just to 0, which again is going to set it at 130 inches from the terrain. And now I'm going to select my overview. We'll scroll around. You can see we have a nice slope from the front to the back. Now we also can edit these regions. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and use this break line tool. With that region selected, this again is my edit toolbar to edit that particular object. So I'll simply break the line, and that enables me to pull just a section of it back. And I think I need this to be a little bit larger too, so we'll use our edit handles to resize that. Now I want to add just a few more regions, so I'll come back up to my terrain, down to elevation data, and then grab a region. I'll marquee right in the corner here, and this one I'm going to open up and we're going to set it to 40 inches. Okay, just gives it a little bit of depth there. And it looks like my perspective for this camera got a little bit off, so I'm going to exit out of here and create another 3D overview so we can start from scratch with that. And now I'll zoom in. So as I was explaining before when we had the terrain specification open, this is the skirt option. So you can see the depth of the terrain at various points throughout, as opposed to simply following the terrain where you would simply see a 12-inch line that curves around. Alright, 2 more elevation regions. Come up to terrain and we'll draw one out in the back here, right about here. And we'll set this one to -100. We'll pull that down. And then one last one, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit for this one. And marquee this area. Open it up and we'll set it to 40. Alright, so now what I want to do is create a division between these two regions so we can have a nice flat area for the rest of my terrain design. I'm going to move this window a little bit better into place. Alright, so next we're going to draw out some retaining walls between our elevation regions. So I'm going to select my floor plan, come up to my terrain options, and you'll see we have terrain, wall, and curbs. One of them is a retaining wall. We're going to draw these out in the same way that we do any other wall in the program. Simply click and drag, and you'll see that created there. Now I'm going to click and drag it out even further. And then we also have a curved retaining wall option. So for this one, you'll notice the shadow of it appear as we are drawing it. And as soon as we like the way it's placed, we can release and you'll see that created there. And it looks like we have a bit of a connection, so we'll pull that back. And then in our 3D view, I'm going to zoom in here, we can simply pull this up and you'll notice, so we have a little bit of a barrier there. Now we'll pull this section up and pull this, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. We'll pull it down. I want those two to meet up. Okay, so now we have that nice retaining wall built for us. So this gives us a nice flat area to draw out our patio. And to draw out the patio, we're going to use our terrain feature options. So again, this is under our terrain menu, and you'll see these features. I'm going to start just with a rectangular feature, and I'll click and marquee just like we did with the elevation regions, pull it out, and you'll notice it appears just as a slab of concrete to begin with. But we can use our material painter. I have these pavers already pre-selected, and using this eyedrop tool I can grab that paver and simply paste it onto my patio area so that we have the pavers extended throughout. So we're going to edit the shape of this terrain feature quite a bit. So I'm going to hit my space bar. The space bar is a handy shortcut. It always gets you back to your select objects mode, so that then I can select my terrain. And I'm going to pull this out, and then just like we did with the elevation region earlier, I'm going to come down to my edit toolbar, select my break line tool, and break the line where I want to drag it out further. And then this I actually pulled back just a little bit too far, so we'll pull that back into place. And then these lines, you can create all sorts of different shapes. So I'm simply going to pull out the corner so that it creates a nice angle there. and here we can see what we're doing. Now I'm going to select that line, and just as I did with my terrain earlier, I'm going to use this Change Line to Arc tool. So it'll create a nice arc, and we're going to pull it back the other direction so that we have a nice sloped effect there. Not quite so many sharp lines. Alright, now that that terrain feature is set, we're going to come up to our terrain options, and this time we'll do just a spline feature. Come over to this curved retaining wall area and draw out a little circular terrain feature. And again, use our material eyedropper tool so we can extend the pavers over here. Alright, so now that our patio area is drawn, we're going to turn our attention towards creating a deck. As you can see, we have a door up on our first floor, but we need a way to get down to our patio area. We kind of want to have a tiered deck, so that's what we're going to work on next. And to do so, I'm going to come up to my deck tools and simply start drawing out a straight deck railing. You can see you have a lot of different options for drawing out your decks. There's the straight and curved decks, both with railings, or if you're going to be doing a deck that's, for instance, just on the terrain and you don't need the railing, you also have the option of drawing out just a straight deck edge or a curved deck edge. And then if you're going to be doing a polygon shaped deck, this is a really handy tool to use as well. But we'll just draw out our deck manually, and we do want to have a railing because we're going to be up on the first floor. So I'm going to zoom in on this area, and we'll start simply by drawing out a line. And you'll see my temporary dimension that appears as I'm drawing. We want to pay attention to that because I want about 9 feet 6 inches. And we'll get pretty close, and then we still have the option, just like with everything else, of putting our cursor right over that dimension and typing in 9 feet 6 inches. Hit enter, and you'll see that change. Next, we're going to draw out a deck at an angle, and we'll simply just draw it out here. And I want to note that with angled walls, they're very easy to create, and they're going to snap every 15 degrees. So you can see as we move it, it's snapping each 15 degrees. And you do have the option, if you don't want the snaps there, we can come up to our edit and down to snap settings, and you can turn off those angle snaps. You do also have the option, I can open it up, of changing the wall angle. So you can type in whatever angle you want that to be if you have something very specific you're trying to do. I'm happy with 45 degrees, so we'll leave it there. And this dimension is very close. I just want 7 feet 8 inches. And we do want to pay attention to, you'll see we have 3 different indicators here. We can either move the start, which would be this side of the wall, the end, which would be this side, or we can move both ends. Because I've already dimensioned this one, I want to make sure that this dimension is not going to change my previous one, so we're going to make sure that we're moving the end. Hit enter, and you'll see that change. Okay, next we're going to just continue drawing out our deck. This one we want to be 9 feet, and that one we can snap pretty easily. And we'll draw out another angle. And then we'll draw an edge adjoining it, just come down a little bit. And this one we want to make sure that our deck is going to extend over to our door. So we'll pull these in until they meet up. And then as soon as the deck is finished, you'll notice it automatically placed my posts and my footings for me, and it framed out the deck. So as soon as the deck room is finished, it's going to automatically frame it for you. Obviously with Home Designer Professional, we have quite a bit of control as far as how that's framed, and we can manually adjust all of it. With many of the other programs, you'll still have some control and you'll be able to get into the deck specification to edit some of those settings. I'll open that up here in just a minute so we can take a look at those and see how we can automatically edit some of those. And I do want this to be a tiered deck, so I want a second deck that will draw out over in this area. So we're going to continue working just with our straight deck edge, and I'm going to pull this out about 16 feet. Well, we'll do 17 feet, and then 12 feet for this one. And you can see with the temporary dimension we can snap right to that. And 17 feet again, and then we'll pull it down. And you'll notice as soon as we created that room, it again created another framed deck with the posts and footings. I'm going to go ahead and delete this living area. Obviously, a deck is not going to provide us with any additional living space. So next, I want to lower this deck 50 inches so that we have the two tiers. So I'm going to select the deck, and you'll notice I got the terrain feature there first. So I'll simply select Tab to select the next object and get to that deck room. I'm going to open that up, and we do have the room type selected. That's really important for a deck because it frames it according to deck framing. And we're going to get under the Structure tab and simply lower the floor 50 inches. Select OK, and you'll see it pulls it down. And let's open back up that deck specification. Again, we'll press Tab to get to the next room. So we do have, just like with any other room, this deck is a room specification, so we have quite a few different tools to edit it. And when the room is named a deck, we have this additional tab that will have all of our deck options. So we can change the beam type, we can specify how the plankings are. You also have control over your joists and beams, whether or not you have footings. So there's quite a few different options in here if you want to get a little bit more specific as to how the deck is framed. Now, many of these options are only going to be available in Home Designer Professional, as that's the program that has the most in terms of framing capability. Home Designer Architectural does have quite a bit in this tab for your deck specification as well. I do also like to check this Keep Deck Framing after deck room is deleted. What that does is if I move a wall, if I happen to remove the room, in other words there's a gap between two walls, it means that it's not automatically going to delete all of my framing. And we do have automatic deck framing selected as well, so that when we do make a change, it'll automatically update our framing. And since I'm happy with all of our settings, I'm just going to select OK. And now we obviously need some stairs going from one deck to another and from our deck to our patio. So we're going to come up to our stair tools, and there's a couple of different options. We do have a click stairs, which will automatically create the number of stairs that you need. I like to use this straight stairs so that I have a little bit of control over how they're drawn. Now, with stairs, we can draw in the direction that you're walking up. So if you use your left mouse button, it's going to automatically create stairs walking in the direction that you'll go up. You do also have the option of using your right click, and it will draw your stairs going down. So it gives you the ability to draw from an upper deck to a lower one. And then I do also want to, I accidentally drew out a stair there. We'll select that and delete it. So I wanted to make sure I pressed my space button first so that then I could select my stairs. And we'll pull those out a little bit. I want them to be a little wider. And this one we'll go ahead and just leave the way that it is. And I do notice if we scroll in here, we have a railing sitting there, but that's not a problem. We just need to put in a doorway. So I'm going to select my door tool and place it right where that stair is, And we can select that doorway and drag it out a little bit so that now we have room to walk from one area to another. And we also probably want to pull these stairs out a little bit. It doesn't look like we're going to have much support for that stairs. So we'll just pull that out so we make sure the entire first step is sitting on our deck. Alright, now our deck is pretty well finished, drawn out. I do want to show something really quickly. We'll swing around to the front of the house for just a second. So you'll notice we have a roof over this deck room. So we'll open up this room and take a look at it. And you'll notice that under our Structure tab we have Roof over this room selected. So simply by selecting that checkbox, it'll automatically place the roof over our room. Only in our backyard we don't want to have that, but I wanted to show that that is something very easy to do just with a simple checkbox. Okay, now the final thing I want to do with our deck is we just want to match some materials. So I'm going to use our material eyedropper again. I'm going to grab this and we'll do for the entire floor. Simply match that material throughout so we have some nice white deck railings. And I also want to grab on our staircase, we have some planking. We'll do room by room for this one. So we have different modes that we can paste these materials. I want to paste all of the joists in this room, and it's going to ask me whether I want to turn off my automatic deck framing. We are finished creating our deck, so I can simply select yes because I know we're not going to be updating it beyond this. And now we have some matched materials. And we just want to grab this last one here as well on each side. There we go. So now that our deck is finished, I'm going to get back into my Select Objects mode. We're going to turn our attention to this area over here where we're going to create a custom pool. So we'll also use our scroll wheel and pan over to this section. And so to start with our pool, we're going to create another terrain feature. So under terrain, we'll come down to our features and select another rectangular feature. Marquee to draw it out. You'll notice it'll just look like a slab of concrete to begin with, but we'll make quite a few changes to this. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that it's dimensioned exactly how we want it. So I want an 18-foot. So again, I put my cursor right over the dimension, click on it, and then I can enter my dimension and press enter. And then I want the length of this pool to be 30 feet. So we'll type that in, press enter, and we'll see that update. Now I'm going to use this move edit handle so I can move it into the right location. We also can use our center object tool to center it right over this terrain feature. Alright, and now we're going to open it up, and instead of the height being 1 inch off of the ground, we're going to make this a negative number. So we'll do negative 80 inches, and we'll leave the thickness at 1, and select OK. So you'll notice now it looks like it's disappeared, but that's not a problem at all. We're going to select the terrain feature, our pavers, open it up, and select Clip Overlapping Terrain Features. And select OK. And now you'll see it made a nice little hole for our pool. And now I want to create some nice stairs leading down into the pool. So to do that, I like to get into simply a cross-section view. This is going to be under our orthographic cameras. We'll select cross-section. And in Home Designer Professional, we also have the option of doing a back-clipped cross-section, which can be pretty nice if you only want to take a nice little clip of it. We'll do just a regular cross-section and pull our camera out so we can see that pool area. Zoom in on it. Now we're going to have both of these side by side so that we can see exactly what we're doing as we're creating our steps. So to create the steps, I'm going to use our slab tool, and this is located just right in our default toolbar up at the top. can click on that slab and pull it out to draw a step. And you'll see it appear right here. It's by default just going to be a 4-inch slab located just above the terrain. So the elevation at top we're going to change. We're going to do a number of these. So this particular one is going to be negative 144 inches, which will put it just below the pool line. And we'll change the thickness to 66 inches and select OK. And I also need to edit the width of this. So I'm going to select the edge I want to move, put my cursor right over the dimension, and type in 2 feet. Hit enter and you'll see that thickness updated in both views. Now I'm going to select this and simply copy and paste and reflect about object. Now we have a number of different lines that we can use to reflect it. I'm going to reflect it right about itself. Click, and it creates an exact copy next to it, so that then I can open that up and simply modify the elevation to negative 154 and the thickness to 56. Select OK, and it pulls that stair down a little bit. We're going to do that one more time. Copy, reflect about itself, open it up, and this I want to be a little bit of a longer weighting region. So we're going to change it to negative 170 and 40 inches thick. Okay, and edit the thickness to 8 feet. So that now we have a nice long waiting area in our pool. And we'll take this step, copy, reflect about our waiting area, and we'll open it up, change the elevation to negative 180, the thickness to 30 inches, and one last step until we reach the bottom. Copy, reflect across, open it up, and change it to 190 and only 20 inches thick. And now we have stairs that reach the bottom. And now that we've finished with that, I'm going to go ahead and I can either delete this camera or I can just exit out of this view. And now in our camera view, we can see those steps leading down to the bottom of our pool. So the last thing that this pool needs is some water at the top. So we'll use our slab tool one last time, and this time we'll marquee across the entire pool. And I want to make sure it's covering the entire pool area. And we need to open it up, change it to negative 4 inches so it sits just below the terrain so it's not going to overflow. And then we'll change the thickness to 76 inches thick since it's going to cover the entire pool. And then we'll also need to change our material from a concrete slab, get into our library. And this is going to open up a subset of library objects that are specific to whatever we're editing. You can see we're in our core catalog. Open up our landscaping options, and under the landscaping options we have some water. So we'll simply select one, click OK, select OK to apply those changes. Oh, and it looks like we didn't move that further down. I forgot that we have the terrain set at negative 130. So I'm going to open it up and simply change this to negative 134. Select OK, and there it's in its proper place. Okay, and that pretty much finishes up our pool. So now we're going to turn our attention over to this area, and I want to do quite a few things over here. So first of all, I guess while we're still on the theme of water, we'll come up to our terrain tools and you'll notice we have this water feature tool. So we'll come up to our terrain features and you'll notice we have this water feature tool. And I'm simply going to draw out a round pond because we're going to assume this is sitting at the edge of the water. You can see that nice water feature created. Then there's a couple different things I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to copy and paste in place and you'll see it increases the thickness there. And I'm just going to pull it out so that we have the more realistic effect of the water. And then I'm going to copy and paste in place one last time. This time, I'm going to open it up, and we're going to change the height to 1/4 inch and change the material. Again, get into our library. We're automatically already in our landscaping. So we'll go to sand and soil and just grab a nice sand option. Select OK, and then we'll pull it out just a little bit to create a sandy beach area. So you can experiment with these different water features, create quite a few different fun effects for your landscaping. So next, I want to draw some stairs right along this terrain leading to our beach area. So to do that, I'm going to start simply by drawing out stairs along my terrain. So we'll draw it. I'm going to pull this terrain feature, or this elevation region, out just a little bit, and we'll draw out our stairs right along this terrain. And if we scroll around here, you'll see we're sitting up quite a bit above the terrain. So to edit that, we're going to get into an elevation region, or excuse me, an elevation view, just like we did for the pool. And we'll just drag that right along to the stairs so we can have a bit of a better look as far as how far off of the terrain we are. So we'll use our tape measure tool. This is sort of like a temporary dimension, just like with a tape measure, where you can drag it out and see about the distance that we need to pull the top of that stair down. So we'll open up this staircase, and there's quite a few things we need to change about this stairs because they're not really set for terrain stairs. So the first thing is we're going to uncheck automatic heights, and we're going to change the top height. I'll move it down about 3.5 feet. What's nice is that the program will do the math for you. So you can select -3.5 feet, tab, and you'll see it moves it right down. Then we're going to get into the style, and we're going to remove the stringer. We don't need a stringer on these types of stairs. Going to remove open underneath and open risers. We also we don't really need a tread or a tread overhang, so we'll just do 0 inches for both of those. And then come into the railing. We really only need the railing on one side, so we'll remove on the left. And then, let's see, one last thing. We want to change our materials, but we'll do that just using our material eyedropper. So we'll select OK and see how that looks. We'll exit out of here. Now we can see the staircase that was created. And I just want these to be concrete stairs. It wouldn't really make sense to have wooden stairs here. So we'll use this concrete eyedropper and scroll in a little bit, change to object mode, and there we go. Now we have concrete stairs set into our terrain. And it does look like we can pull these up maybe just a little bit. So we'll change this, let's do 160. Okay, and yeah, that pulls it up a little bit more out of the terrain. Oh, forgot to get back into select objects mode. Not a problem, we'll just click Control Z. I painted my terrain concrete. And now it's back to grass. So the next thing we're going to do is I want to create some stepping stones leading from our terrain feature to our stairs. So we're going to come up to our terrain tools, down to stepping stones, and we'll just do a round stepping stone. Zoom in on this area, maybe pan over to here a little bit too, and we'll draw that out, and we'll just draw out 4 of these. It's okay if they're not exact circles, that's what we want out of a stepping stone. And we can rearrange them a little bit using the move handle. And then I'm going to marquee over all 4 of these. Hold down my control key and deselect that terrain feature that it grabbed to. Then I'm going to copy and paste, and we're going to get into sticky mode with this. And what that enables us to do is to drag out multiple copies very easily all the way along our path. And maybe just one more here. It looks like these 2 might have gone too far, but that's okay. We'll just delete them and pull this one back a little bit. Okay, next we're going to throw in an archway. So we'll get into our library, open up our library browser, and so we have quite a few different catalogs here when you open up your library. We have our core catalog, and that's all of the items that come built into the program itself. We also have bonus and manufacturer catalogs. These are available for download on our website. I'll show you where at the end of today's presentation. And then we also have this user catalog. And here's where we can drag items from these 3 catalogs to create our own custom ones. Or also if you import your own materials or 3D items, they're all going to be available in this catalog here. So I'm just going to expand this folder, and here we just have an arbor. So we'll place that into the plan, rotate it a little bit so it's in the correct position. And then I also want to match the material, so we'll grab this white color, zoom in, and paste it onto the object. So now we have a nice walkway leading to our staircase. And while we're in our library, we'll go ahead and place some other items in this plan. We have a couple of chairs here we can place out into our deck area. Rotate those around so they're looking out at the water. And then I have a pre-designed architectural block where I've blocked a bunch of items together and saved them as one item in my library. I'll go ahead and click in my deck and you'll see those placed up there. Then I can rearrange them right into place. And once they are placed, you can see we have this line that simply indicates that they're a block. With one click I can come down to my edit toolbar and explode that block so that now they are separate items and we don't have that line. Next, I want to place a hot tub over in this deck. So we'll just click to place that over there. And obviously our supports are not quite right for a hot tub, so you would probably want to edit your framing or your supports so that you make sure that it's supporting that hot tub. And I do want to turn your attention, so up in our library, in our bonus catalogs, we do have some exterior arbors. That's where I grabbed this one. We also have some outdoor living, outdoor rooms and gardens, so there's some great bonus catalogs on our website for outdoor use. I'd recommend going and taking a look at those. You can find some great items for your designs. And speaking of those gardens, we are definitely missing some garden bed areas, so that's what we'll go ahead and do next. We'll exit out of our library browser for now. Come up to our terrain options. And actually, before we do this, let's take a different camera view. We've been in our full overview for quite a while. So let's exit out of this full overview and we'll come up to our cameras. Instead of taking our full overview, we'll do what's called a full camera. And with our full camera selected, we'll go ahead and click and drag to the area we want to be looking at in our plan. This is going to place us directly on the terrain looking straight at where we're going to be editing. So now let's go ahead and actually reopen that library browser. I'm going to pan over and zoom in this view. And we're going to come back to our user catalog, open up that library again. We're going to grab this garden and simply place it in this plan. Now it'll tell me that the area is too constricted, but that's okay. We'll come right over to this section, place it over here, and then we just drag it right into place. And you can see my pre-arranged architectural block with all of my plants is assembled. So that can be a very quick and easy way to place multiple items into a plan all at once. And then, just as we did with the deck furniture, we can come down here and explode the architectural block so that then they operate as individual pieces. And we do have, just as I showed you earlier, quite a few of these pre-arranged gardens in the bonus library, so you can go and download those, and it makes for some easy placement. But now let's go ahead and look the other direction, and we're going to actually draw out our plan, or draw out a garden bed from scratch and place those plants. So we'll rotate right around over to this section, and let's pull us just a little bit higher above the terrain. I'm going to select my camera view, and we'll raise us up to 80 inches just so we can see the terrain a little bit better. Now we're going to come over to our terrain options, and instead of to feature like we've gone before, let's draw out a garden bed. So we'll start just by drawing out a polyline garden bed. This is very similar to the terrain features that we've already drawn out. We'll simply click and drag to place that, and from there we can edit it. And I do want to break the line right along where it meets with my terrain feature. We can zoom in a little bit too so we can see what we're doing. And then pull this side back. So now we have a nice long garden bed meeting up with our pool area. So next, let's just take a quick look at our plant chooser tool. So we're going to go down to, again in our terrain options, down to plant and then plant chooser. This is a handy little tool that you can use to search for plants. If you don't know specifically what plant you're looking for, you can search based on a variety of factors, whether it's the time of year that it blooms, whether it's a tree or a shrub. You can see all of the options here. We're just going to search based on a name. So let's look for a hydrangea. And we'll search, and you can see we have our radial button selected as common names so we can see all of the hydrangea options. And from here we can select hydrangea and place it into our plan. And we can place multiple of them. Now you'll notice that my plants are snapping to the edges of my garden beds. Very easy to remove those. I'm going to exit out of the plant chooser here. We're going to come up to our edit toolbar, or our edit menu, down to the snap settings, and with one click we'll remove object snaps. Oftentimes when you're placing plants, that can be pretty handy just so it doesn't snap to the edges of the terrain features. And it brought us into my landscape and deck library. So I do have quite a few options pre-arranged, so I've placed them here in this specific library so that I can easily place them into my plan. And we'll just place multiple of those. We'll put in a couple of small linden trees, and then maybe a couple of rocks too. Those always add a little bit of extra feature. And finally, one last bush, just to finish off our design. And from here, all of these are obviously the same height, so we can reduce the size of some, increase the size of others, rearrange them so that they don't all look like exact copies, as with landscaping that's probably not going to happen, that you're going to have the exact same size and shape for everyone, so resizing them can be pretty handy. And you'll notice that it is resizing the height and width at the same time, something really handy that the plants do automatically for you. When you open it up, you'll notice it has this checkbox that retains the aspect ratio, so it makes sure that when you increase the height, it's going to increase the width along with it. So for instance, if I move that to 40, it automatically updated my width. Now I do also want to place a couple of trees throughout my entire plan, so I'm going to zoom out, and I have several big maple trees. We'll place a few of those in our plans too to give some nice effects. So if we get into our camera view, we can see those as well. And then one last one. I'll place a couple of these around as well. And that pretty much finishes up our backyard area. I could kind of zoom around here so we can see all that we've created. And now we're going to turn our attention. I'm going to exit out of here and we'll take another full overview and we'll turn our attention to the front yard area. I'm going to zoom in so we can see it a little better. And there's several things that I want to do here in the front yard. So first of all, I'm in the space bar, so I'm not going to be placing any more plants. And let's start off. We haven't worked with our fence tools at all. So that's under our build menu, under fencing, and we'll simply draw them out just as we do any other wall in the program. And I'm going to draw it right along where this elevation region is. And pull it back, and one last wall. So now we have a nice fenced in front yard. And obviously we have quite a few different fencing options when we open up our fence wall under the rail style and in our Newell's Balusters tab. You can get into the library, you'll find all sorts of different options for editing that fence, but I'm happy with just our basic picket fence. And we do need a pathway leading from what will be our front gate up to where our front steps will be. So we'll come up to terrain, down to feature, and we'll simply draw that right along there. And now that we have that set, we can rotate up and look at it. We do need some steps leading up to the front porch. So let's use this time just our click stairs, so that with one click it'll properly place the number of steps we need to get up to the front door. And finally we need a gate. So this time in our library, let's use our search bar. We can just type in gate and we'll scroll down a little bit until we start to find some. Once we find something that's a little bit along the lines of what we're looking for, we can right-click and show in browser. This will take us straight to where in our library, so you'll see in the core catalogs, then under fences and railings and into gates, we have all of our different gate options. So I'm going to select the folders. We can take a look at all our different options here. And I want the picket gate. So in our plan view, I'm going to place that and resize it a little bit. I want it to be 6 feet. And then I'm going to use our center object tool again to center it right where these stairs are. You'll notice in 3D it's placing it at 0 along the terrain, just like any other object, but we can simply pull it down into place. Alright. Oh, and looks like we moved it, so we'll center it once more. Very easy to do. And then what I like to do, what I think creates a nice effect, is I like to show the gate open in 3D, and then maybe rotate it in a little bit, just so that you can see that it's a gate leading to our front door. So again, with any door or gate in the program, you can select Show Open or Closed in 3D. Sometimes that creates some really nice visual effects. Now we'll go ahead and I want a street running along this area. So we'll come up to our terrain tools where we have the road option. We're just going to draw out a straight road right along the edge of our terrain here. And we'll pull that back so it meets up with the edge. And if we zoom around, there we have the road leading along the edge of our house. And now there's only one more thing we need to finish off our front yard, and I have it in my user library. So we'll select this mailbox and come in here and just drop it in right next to the gate. So we have the nice little mailbox sitting there. And our front yard is pretty well finished. Now the final thing that I want to take a look at before we move to the website is we have some sun angle and north pointer tools. So I'm going to exit out of this library. We're done with that, and we'll maximize our plan view here. So up in our CAD options, under lines, in Home Designer Professional we have both a north pointer and a sun angle. So we'll start out simply by drawing where north is, and then we'll come back to our lines and create a sun angle. To do the sun angle, you simply click anywhere in the plan and it opens up our specification. It's automatically going to place us in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We can edit the date to, let's say, early spring, and edit the time of day. Let's do a morning one. And then select Make Shadow. And you can see these lines that appear that show us exactly where our shadow is going to lie. And this is a really handy way to see where your shadows are going to fall at various times during the year and during the day, so you can see where you should place your trees and see where the sun is going to be to properly place your deck. You also have the option in the 3D views to do something called Final View with Shadows, which is going to create that shadowed effect in your 3D views, and updating your sun angle is going to update how those shadows fall. We'll select OK, and you'll notice that we need to press the spacebar to get out of our sun angle selection, but you'll notice that this shadow, we can easily delete it and move it around simply by changing our north or by editing the sun angle. Okay, and with that, we have finished up our landscaping plan. So now I just want to turn our attention to the website for a second. So here is our Home Designer website, homedesignersoftware.com. And under products, here's where you can see the 6 products that we have available. Again, I was working in Home Designer Professional today. The majority of the tools will also apply to the architectural and landscape and deck version, but you can see a full product comparison by going to Product Chooser and then selecting Compare All Products. And this will open up a full comparison where you can see side by side what each program has to offer and what program is going to best fit your needs. Also, we have under the User Center the training videos page where you can see a full list of videos. If you need to select the one that's applicable to your version, you can click this drop down and you'll see all the videos that will apply to the one that you have. We also have these free training webinars like the one that you're watching now. So here's where you can sign up for more. And we do have this user forum as well. It's a great resource for you to go and connect with other users, ask questions, especially if it's something specific to your region or something that you just want to know a little bit more about. Also under support, we have this help database, and you can see we have some featured articles, so some that we're choosing to feature. We have some that are the most popular, the ones that are searched for the most often or are found the most often. And then over on the left-hand side, we have all of the different categories. So we can come down, for instance, to terrain, and we'll find the 25 articles that are applicable to this subject. So for instance, we have how to convert a plot plan polyline into a terrain perimeter. This is a different method of creating our terrain perimeter than we did today. It allows you to use CAD lines in order to convert it into a terrain. And at the top you'll see the programs that that particular article applies to. Alright, next under User Center as well, I also want to show you our content downloads. So here's where we're going to find those bonus and manufacturer catalogs that I showed you earlier. So you can find some more of those exterior ones, or we have a few manufacturer catalogs as well that you're free to go and download anytime. Finally, under products, we also have upgrades discounts. So we always give an upgrade credit to go from one version to another. So for instance, to go from Home Designer Suite to Architectural, you'd receive full credit to upgrade. And that's where you can find that particular section. If you have any last minute questions, please feel free to type those in to Emily. She'll be happy to answer those for you. We'll have a few minutes after the presentation is ended for that as well. We are based off of professional grade software called Chief Architect, and so it is rather robust software. There's a lot that you can do with it. If you are a professional, you might want to take a look at our Chief Architect page as well. You'll see some additional options above and beyond what we have to offer in the Home Designer line. We do have a 30-day money-back guarantee on all purchases. This includes upgrades, so please feel free to give us a try out. If for any reason it doesn't work, you can return. Please check out all of our online training resources. We have so many resources for you to go and take a look at if you need some additional training in the program. If you need help choosing a product, please feel free to give us a call at one of these numbers or send an email. We'd be happy to help direct you to the right resource. Thank you so much for attending today's demonstration, and I hope you have a wonderful day.